Today on the podcast, I'm very excited to introduce you to Pam MacDonald, who is an HR consultant. Welcome to the podcast, Pam.
Thank you, Kate. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's fantastic to have you here, Pam. HR is one of my favourite things I love to talk about. I work with lots of HR professionals because obviously we've got a lot of things in common. You have got your own HR consultancy. Tell us, why did you start your consultancy? Tell us more about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I started Broadspring Consulting actually 17 years ago this month. So happy birthday. And it's sort of interesting because I resisted going into HR for a lot of my career because I felt that HR was very transactional, that there wasn't really that much support, coaching and guidance, that it was all about rules and compliance. And then I flipped that script and thought, actually, what I need to do is to start my own consulting practice where I can be coaching people in HR on how to guide people through the procedures rather than just following the bouncing ball. And wanting to help people because we spend so much of our lives at work and work needs to be enjoyable.
Yeah. It does. It does need to be enjoyable. And so tell me more. So how did your consultancy then come to life from that?
Well, I had worked in HR and financial services. I had run my own teams, had facilitated a lot of training, done a lot of coaching, and worked for a global consulting firm for a couple of years. And I thought, I feel like I've got this nice conglomeration of skills that are related and perhaps unique in their combination. And I actually wanted to take a slightly long holiday from the consulting company that I was working with, and the way that their leave without pay policy was interpreted by the manager that I reported to was very, very narrow. And so I said, well, I'm going on this holiday. It's a once in a 100-year event that I'm going to see. So bye-bye. And I think that also fueled my passion for wanting to help people to do things even better in business, to help people to be more effective as leaders, to help them to understand the complexities and also the nuance of interacting with people, leading people, and helping them bring out the best in themselves and the best in the teams around them. And so I contacted somebody in my network and actually contacted a few people and said, hey, I've decided to start up on my own. This is what I'd like to focus on. If there's anybody that you know who needs someone like that, please feel free to introduce me. And I landed my first client within the first week of being in my consulting practice. So that was pretty good. And kind of haven't looked back really, been doing a lot of work, mostly in professional services firms. And what we do is we consistently and continually promote people in organisations because they're technically very good at what they do. And in financial services, there's a disclaimer that says past performance is no indicator of future results.
Yeah.
And yet we rely on people's past performance when we promote them and put them in charge of humans. Then we don't support them with any coaching or training. And then we wonder why it all goes pear-shaped for the leader and for the team. So as you can see, I'm just a little bit passionate about that.
You're not alone there. That's one of my key passions. You know, I always say people end up in leadership because they're really good at something else. And that's really a little bit unfair.
Absolutely. And it's hard for them because I think their bosses are trying to give them a compliment.
Yes.
But what we're doing is we're taking them away from that skill set that they've worked so hard to develop and their expertise and all of that study. And I mean, the reality is that the IR and HR environment, particularly in Australia, is increasingly complex.
Yes.
We do a fantastic job of educating employees about their rights, but we don't actually talk to leaders and companies about what their rights are. So to me, that makes it even more foolish that we just keep promoting people because of what they used to do, and we don't equip them for success in leadership roles.
No. I think that is so true. And I think you're right that they're wanting to present as congratulations, you're doing a great job. Here's a step up the ladder. And then that creates its own world of fear, because if we don't train that person, it's sort of like, well, you've given me this job, therefore you must think that I've got the skills to be able to do it, because if I didn't, you wouldn't have promoted me. And so now here I am in this leadership role. I haven't got a clue how to lead people, but somehow you think I do. So, all right, I'll make it up as I go along. And that must be a really scary space to be.
Absolutely. And scary for the people who are relying on them. And
Yeah,
when we think about psychosocial wellbeing and psychosocial risks, one
yeah,
of the hazards or one of the risks that's identified is actually making sure that people have the capability to do the job that they've been put into.
yes,
And so in my view, when we promote people into leadership roles without supporting them, encouraging them, we're doing exactly that. We are actually putting them into a high risk situation. And what happens is that they're dealing with complex business environments, they're dealing with complex humans in their teams, and sometimes tensions can get mislabeled as a conflict and then it gets mismanaged.
yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it is profound. And I think it would be wonderful if we either didn't necessarily, if we had better ways of promoting people without giving them leadership responsibilities. So we recognize people's technical skills and said, congratulations, you've now got this other tier, but we hire people to do leadership who are really good at leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think wrap our arms around people who are in leadership roles. I mean, we
Mm,
talk about mentoring and buddying and collaboration and projects for people with great technical skills. Why don't we do that with the human skills?
yes. Yes. Agreed. Agreed. That's we need to do those type of things. We need to find a way to better support people, because the thing is, the consequences of poor leadership is profound. Absolutely profound. And it's not just profound for the leader, it's profound for the team. And that can have really significant consequences about other people's performance or success in their careers or whatever.
Yep. And it's profound for the families too, Kate. I mean,
Yeah.
let's have a look at the research that's coming out now about the ever diminishing percentage of the new generation of employees who have ambitions for leadership roles.
Yeah.
They've watched their parents and they've watched people in their families struggle, grapple with the tension and the self-doubt of being in a leadership role. And they're sitting back and they're saying, no, the extra pay that I'm going to earn, that's not worth it.
It's not worth it. And realistically, it's not. You know, I can't tell you the number of people, I probably can, but the number of people I know who have been experts in their field, engineers or whatever, who have ended up in very significant leadership roles, who then retire to go back to do the trade, so that they finish their career not in that leadership space, but using the skills that they always wanted to use.
Yep, absolutely. And I've coached a number of senior executives and leaders with the result that they have stepped away from the leadership role and have gone back into a senior technical expert role, or they've become consultants in their field
Yeah,
for the same reasons, because they lose their job satisfaction, they lose their passion, they lose their spark. And my firm view is that everybody goes to work wanting to do the best job that they can.
absolutely.
And if I'm in a job where I don't feel that I'm well suited for it, we're not talking imposter syndrome here. We are talking people who are very clearly doing a self-assessment and saying, I lack some of these foundational skills for this role. They will self-select out because they want to do the best for the company. And sometimes, and I'm sure you've seen this just as much as I have, sometimes we have tensions or things that are not quite right bubbling along, and then they escalate over time. And we end up with a formal process getting kicked off. I'm
Yeah,
thinking about one that I had earlier this year with a really great individual who had been in a leadership role for a number of years, but who didn't actually understand some of the elements that were needed to be managed as a leader, thinking about how to manage personal and professional relationships, thinking about how to find that boundary between being friends or friendly, what kind of communication styles work well with people, how to manage potential conflicts of interest. None of those things had ever come across this person's remit previously.
yeah,
It went unaddressed for a number of years because things were kind of coasting along okay. And then we get a new member who comes into the team who looks around, does an environmental scan and says, I don't like what I'm seeing here. I don't think this is right. And because the manager didn't have those communication skills, they couldn't be involved in solving the process. So the individual kind of took it a couple of levels higher, lodged a formal complaint, and we ended up with a full-blown workplace investigation. And those are exhausting for everybody. And we have a leader who is sitting there head in hands saying, I don't understand where things went off the rails. Can I fix this?
Yeah.
And the difficulty is that if it's been going on for a long time, there's so much collateral damage to relationship that's really hard to come back from.
Yeah.
Plus what happens during an investigation process, no matter how well we conduct them, there's always, I refer to it as a bruise that stays.
Yeah. Yes.
That damage that sits there, and the cost, the emotional, financial and time cost for everybody that's involved. Part of me thinks that's the one time in my life that I would love to have a time machine to be able to go back to that initiation point and do something different, help people to do something different.
Absolutely. And I hear you. So I deal with that situation all the time. And I'm dealing with one in particular at the moment where somebody has made a complaint. It was put in writing. It was put in writing. This person is reporting up, so they're complaining about their manager. They have taken one for the team. They are literally wanting management to know that this is a problem, not just for themselves, but for other people. So they put it in writing. And then what happened next was, let's start a formal process. And this went through a P&C team. Let's start a formal process because it's in writing. The stress that these two individuals have been under now for 3 months. So I'm about to do a facilitated conversation with them, but 3 months. And the person who had the complaint made against them has had ill health due to stress. The person who made the complaint is really nervous about just having to have this facilitated conversation when they have not had any contact now for 3 months.
Yeah.
The person who came in to investigate was very legalistic, and it was just sort of black and white. Is this bullying or not bullying? It's not bullying, therefore you weren't successful. And it's like, and nobody has checked in on the person who the complaint was made against. So for 3 months, nobody has said, how are you traveling? Are you okay? Can I support you through this? None of that. And so here we are 3 months later, and I'm stressed for both of them. And there's a grudge now. There's a grudge. You lodged a formal complaint against me. You didn't tell me to my face what the problem was, and I'm expected to work with you going forward. It's like, trust gone. And it's 3 months. 3 months. We've got to do this better.
Absolutely. If there's one call to action for our profession, I think that needs to be it. We need to coach and guide people to be able to, as Brene Brown says, embrace the discomfort, become comfortable being uncomfortable, and help people to be able to say, I'm really sorry that you feel that way.
Yeah.
Can we work it out?
Yeah.
Because we've got a chance at salvaging the working relationship if we can get onto it before that depth of grudge has been built, and before that concern and speculation. Because we humans are really creative. We get very imaginative, and we can blow things out of proportion, particularly when there's a vacuum, such as that 3 months of I'm not hearing anything, I'm not in touch with anybody. I'm going to go into deep speculation about what people are saying about me, and it's not going to be positive.
No way. And I feel ridiculed. I feel humiliated by this whole process. It's incredibly difficult to come back from.
It is.
And there's actually been physical harm because this person has had a health response to this situation. And I think the other thing that's really interesting here is the person who's made the complaint, who's gone into bat. We're talking about trying to manage up a difficult situation. And and this is a middle manager, this is a person reporting to a middle manager and there's somebody above there. Where is the leadership in this situation? We are asking people who are vulnerable to, the wills of the person they're managing, who are managing them. We're asking them to step up and take the responsibility of calling out the behaviour that's ultimately the responsibility of the senior leader. I think we get it wrong all the time. And then, of course, we see people leave because it's not safe.
Yep. And part of me wonders about what was running through the mind of those leaders further up the chain in terms of how stretched their communication skills were, whether they themselves had the capacity to deal with that. And if not, that's what expedites it getting pushed straight into a formal external process, because you guys can't deal with it, I can't deal with it. Let's just pop it into the formal process and we'll let it work its way through. And I think the other thing that people often miss with those kinds of things, Kate, is that we have relationships and connections with people. So I'm a coworker and I watch this happening to someone else. What does that then do to my willingness to raise an issue in the future? Because
Absolutely.
I'm going to sit there and I'm going to think, I don't want to create that level of harm and stress to anyone else. I'm going to stay quiet. And inadvertently, that then perpetuates poor behavior. And it contributes to churn, because I don't want to stay in an environment where I can't raise a concern. I mean, one of my favorite Patrick Lencioni quotes is, when people weigh in, they buy in. So if we've got people with lived experience of poorly managed conflict or poorly managed tension, that creates an environment where people don't feel safe to speak out. And so they'll check out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's very, it's sadly it's poor leadership, but it reflects on what we've been talking about. Those senior leaders are generally the ones who haven't been trained, and they have succeeded because they're really, really good at something else. But it just creates such an uncomfortable and difficult work environment. And, I've worked with organisations where they have been successful in saying, there's been a formal complaint lodged. Would you like to withdraw that for the moment, and we're going to take this seriously, but then we're going to use a different approach. And I did that this week with another organisation, and it worked a treat. Like, it absolutely worked a treat. We had a conversation. We were able to explore, what do we value about each other? What would good look like? And what are some of the challenges we have in achieving that at the moment? So, and what can we put in place to address it? And, win-win. They come away, they're aligned, they like each other better. They know that they go, oh, I just misread that cue. Like, it, we see them as humans.
Yes.
Not as part of a process. I've got to tick the box in order to achieve a certain outcome. Because what we do is we just burn and churn. And I just think the impact that has on people's mental health and other, they take it home with them. They've got all that other difficult situation to deal with. I think we've got to get better at it.
I agree. And I think I've been running a lot of training on how to have skillful conversations with a lot of leaders, with a couple of clients recently. And the amount of times that people come in saying, I've got this really difficult, gnarly situation and I don't know how to approach it. And I take them through some really simple techniques, I suppose simple because I know them, and workshop it with them. And within a couple of hours, they're saying, I really want to go have this conversation now, because I want there to be a solution, and I want the solution to be good for both of us. Now I feel that I've got the agency, the skill and the confidence to go and do that. And it astonishes me about the gaps that we're missing in our HR profession. What are we considering when we're recruiting? We all know that typically if someone has moved on from a role, it's because of that lack of culture fit. And culture fit is often the label that gets put on poor interactions, poor communication. So why aren't we focusing more on interpersonal skills in the recruitment piece? Why aren't we having more robust conversations with senior leaders? And I'm thinking back to a bank that I did a contract with a few years ago, where I was sitting with their senior leadership team and we were talking about their talent pool. And I'd said to them, now, past performance isn't an indicator. We need to think about what are the key elements of performance as a leader. It's going to be managing the people, knowing how things get done around here. And as we started to go around the table talking about person A, every single one of them, Kate, every single one of them forgot what we'd been talking about for the last 40 minutes and went straight back into, oh, this person is really awesome at this and they did really well over here. And I said, I'm going to interrupt you folks. I'm going to ask you, where are the elements of performance or potential about that individual in terms of engaging and leading other humans and understanding how we do things around here? And they said, well, no, this person's been a really great individual contributor. And I said, right, so are they actually, without the benefit of any additional support, do they actually have the high potential that you think that they have? And it was almost like I was blowing up their little process from the inside. But this is the sort of reframing that we have to do as our thinking. And for us in P&C and HR, we have to step into that role of guiding and coaching those decision makers to help
Yeah.
them to make better decisions. And it might
Yeah.
not be that we say no to somebody. It might be that we say not yet,
Mm.
or that we say, when we put you into this permission, we are going to curate around you a robust 6-month development program that is going to focus exclusively on how you manage tension, how you manage people, how you manage
Mhm.
communication. That, I think, is one of the biggest missed opportunities that we have right
Yeah.
now.
We do miss opportunities all the time. We miss it all the time. And there's so much goodwill out there.
Absolutely. And people want to do their best, and they appreciate when their company acknowledges them and rewards them. I I
Mm.
think I think one of the other things that's happening as well is that we're seeing what often gets referred to as a weaponizing of language.
Mm. Mm.
I actually think it's confusion. We've got cohorts who were really deeply impacted by the pandemic and remote working, and our social skills have diminished quite significantly.
Mm.
So now people are unable to differentiate between feeling uncomfortable and feeling unsafe. And they will speak up about a situation when they're uncomfortable, and they will language it by saying that they feel unsafe. And the people that they're dealing with also don't have the language skills to be able to say, can we unpack that a little bit, please? I really
Mm.
don't want you to feel unsafe. What I
Mm.
want is to understand what it is that's making you feel unsafe so we can address it and so we can prevent it.
It's that lack of curiosity. It's the lack of curiosity. We're taking things at face value. We don't ask anything further, and then we wear the consequences of that.
Yeah. And we rush things, Kate, where there's an exercise that I often run in training where I've been working with a leadership group and put them into what's effectively a pretend survival exercise. And I do it after we've spoken about what's the role of the team leader or the manager, and we've had all the things about communication and planning. And they get into a time focused situation and they revert straight back into this. It's just all about the task. I'm not going to be curious. I'm not going to engage anyone else. Not even going to ask what skills other people have. And we get to the end of the exercise and I say to them, so what happened? And how often does that happen at work? And we have this false sense of progress. We think that by pushing through and rushing that we're getting a lot more done. But what we're doing is we're actually creating more work downstream. It's that the 5-minute phone conversation that wasn't had that turned into a 102 email thread.
Absolutely. And just that word email sparks me. Like, can we please not manage people via email?
Yep.
Please.
Yep. Absolutely. Nor
It is a terrible tool.
by text message can I add that too.
Don't do that. Don't do that. So my difficult case that I referred to before, one of those things happened was the person who had the complaint lodged against them got asked on Friday afternoon, can you come and see me Monday about something important? And he didn't know what it was. And he worried because he asked his boss, can you tell me more about this? And his boss ignored the text
No.
message.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't get it. Yeah, sure.
No, you got it, you chicken. You chickened
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. So don't do that. Don't do that
No.
either. Don't give people news on bad news on Fridays. Please don't do that.
That was one thing that I took out of my few years of consulting with a global consulting company. Do not ever deliver bad news on a Friday because people will often take 24 hours to process. And when you tell them something on a Friday, they wake up bang in the middle of the weekend. They've got no support. They've got no calibration piece. And what's going to happen is that they're going to talk to their family about it. And their family will probably be arced up because we've had somebody who's been in a role that they haven't been well equipped for. And so they come in on Monday morning kind of blazing with anger and anxiety and saying, right, that's it. This is the final straw. I'm out of here. And you just think, why would we do that? We just
Yeah.
cannot drop things on people on Fridays. I don't even like
Please
doing it
do.
on Thursday, but
No, I hear you. I hear you. People need support. Yeah, it's a great lesson. And please don't email. Email is just it's a poor communication tool. There's no tone or context. We've got a negative bias. We read negative bias into it anyway. And if we're stressed, that negative bias gets exaggerated. And have a conversation. Pick up the phone,
yeah.
please.
Or
Talk
do a
to the
Teams
person.
or a Zoom.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
not as good as in person, but you can do it.
Do something.
I remember reading some research a number of years ago from Gartner, and they said that 67% of managers fool themselves into believing that the recipients of their email read it in the tone that it was written. And I thought, that's got to be the most delusional statistic that I've ever come across. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only person who has received an email at the end of the day and has felt myself go, get ready for a response. And then I think, no, don't do that. Wait till the morning. And I read it first thing the next morning. And inside my head, there's often what was wrong with me yesterday? There's nothing wrong with this email.
I couldn't agree more. I'm very good at that. I used to read them and then panic, but now I'm very, very good. I'm reading something into this that's maybe not there. I'm closing this email now and I will look at it again in the
Yep.
morning.
Yep. Well done.
But, we have the benefit of working in this space where we're dealing that and we're aware of that. If you're a leader who's under pressure 24/7, that's not necessarily your lived experience.
No. And if you're a leader who has perhaps previously been through some formal complaints processes,
Yes.
you're already feeling sensitive and defensive and on the back foot. That's an even harder place to be able to have that
Yeah.
balanced, reflective,
Yeah.
let me just think
Yeah.
about this and respond in a considered way.
Yeah. I get that. I'm just really mindful of the time. One last question, and you may have already answered it, but what do you wish? What's the one thing you wish people better understood about HR?
Wow. Only one thing. What I wish that people better understood about HR is that it is not the policy and the procedure. That HR is actually about people interfacing and working together. The policy and the procedures are kind of like the guardrails and
Yeah.
the rules of engagement. But HR is actually about facilitating how effectively people interact with each other to bring out their best to then get good results in a work environment.
That is so true. And I love that answer. Yeah. We can hide behind the rules, but it doesn't give us good people outcomes.
No. And there are some people who actually quite enjoy finding ways to circumvent or bend the rules.
Mm, mm.
And what we need to do is to really encourage people to take back some of that personal responsibility to say, I know that there are a couple of different ways that I could approach this. What's
Mm-hmm.
my highest level outcome that I can achieve? And that's what I need to drive for.
Yeah. Lovely. On that extraordinary note, we will end that here. But thank you so much, Pam. Such great wisdom. And if we could get the leadership part right, if we could get better at one, training, coaching, empowering leaders to feel more confident as leaders instead of leaving them to sort of work it out, I think we'd do well. And I think if we could also, and I think the world's moving to this place, but if we could find better ways to promote people and to recognize their technical skills without necessarily giving them people to manage, that would be a really good outcome too.
It would be. And I think for us in HR, we would see our crisis management drop to almost nothing. And we would see our own job satisfaction improve because we could then be investing more of our time in the enjoyable things about helping
Yeah.
people grow and encouraging them
Yeah.
rather than putting out
Yeah.
fires.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Kate. It's been a pleasure.